Here's a question that might change everything you think you know about love. What if the reason you're afraid to love fully isn't because love hurts, but because you've never experienced real love at all, only its pale imitation? Think about your deepest fear about loving someone completely, and let me know in the comments what that fear is. If you're new here, welcome to our podcast where we explore Alan Watts's most transformative insights about consciousness, love, and what it truly means to be human. Hit subscribe to join our journey into the depths of existence. We've all heard that God is love, but most of us have no idea what this actually means. We think it means that God loves us the way a parent loves a child, or the way we love our favorite things, or the way we're supposed to love each other if we're good enough, pure enough, deserving enough. We imagine divine love as a kind of cosmic affection, warm, comforting, protective, conditional on our behavior, and dependent on our worthiness. But what if this entire understanding is not just incomplete, but backwards? What if what we call love is actually just attachment, possession, and need dressed up in prettier clothes? What if real love, the love that is God, that is the very substance of existence itself, is so different from what we think love is that most of us have never actually experienced it, despite spending our whole lives desperately seeking it? This is what Alan Watts understood so clearly through his deep exploration of Eastern wisdom and his own direct experience of what love actually is when it's not filtered through fear, need, and the illusion of separation. He saw that what we usually call love is actually a kind of sophisticated selfishness, an attempt to get something we think we lack from someone we imagine is separate from us. Think about how we typically experience love. We fall in love with someone, and immediately we want to possess them, control them, make sure they don't leave us. We love our children, but we're constantly worried about their safety, their success, their happiness, as if their well-being determines our well-being. We love our friends, but we get hurt when they don't reciprocate our affection in exactly the way we want them to. In every case, what we call love is mixed with fear. Fear of loss, fear of rejection, fear of not being loved back, fear of being alone, fear of not being enough. We love desperately rather than freely, possessively rather than generously, needily rather than abundantly. We use love as a strategy to get security, validation, meaning, and protection from the fundamental uncertainty of existence. But this is not love at all, according to Watts. This is what he called love with a hook, attachment disguised as affection, need disguised as care, possessiveness disguised as devotion. Real love, divine love, the love that God is, has no hooks, no agenda, no conditions, no fear. It doesn't need anything from anyone because it's already complete in itself. It doesn't try to possess because it already includes everything. It doesn't fear loss because it never separates itself from what it loves. This kind of love is not something you feel. It's something you are. It's not an emotion that comes and goes. It's the very fabric of reality itself, the fundamental nature of consciousness, the creative principle that manifests as all existence. When Watts said that God is love, he didn't mean that there's a loving deity somewhere who cares about us. He meant that the very essence of what we are, what everything is love. Not love as an emotion, but love as the creative, unifying, life-giving principle of existence itself. But how do you experience this kind of love? How do you love without hooks, without fear, without the desperate need to be loved back? How do you fall without being terrified of hitting the ground? How do you open your heart completely when everything in your conditioning tells you that vulnerability is dangerous? The key insight that Watts offered is that you can only love freely when you're not trying to get love. You can only give your heart completely when you're not dependent on receiving a heart in return. You can only be vulnerable without fear when you're not trying to protect something that you imagine could be lost or damaged. And you can only reach this state when you recognize that what you really are cannot be threatened, cannot be diminished, cannot be lost. What you really are is not the small separate self that needs love, validation, and security from others. What you really are is the love itself, the consciousness in which all experience arises, the awareness that's looking through your eyes right now, the life force that's beating your heart and breathing your breath. This consciousness, this awareness, this life force is not different from what is looking through everyone else's eyes, beating everyone else's hearts, breathing everyone else's breath. When you recognize this, not as a concept, but as your direct, immediate experience, everything about love changes. You stop trying to get love from others because you realize you are the love you are seeking. You stop trying to possess others because you see that there's no real separation between you and them. You stop fearing the loss of love because you understand that love is not something you can have or lose, it's what you are. This recognition allows you to love the way the sun shines, not because it's trying to get something from the planets it illuminates, not because it needs them to shine back, not because it's afraid they might move away, but simply because shining is its nature. The sun doesn't try to love, it is love, expressing itself as light, warmth, and the life-giving energy that makes all existence possible. This is how you can learn to love, not as something you do to get something you need, but as something you are that naturally expresses itself when you stop being afraid of your own nature. You begin to love people not because they complete you, but because you're already complete, and your completeness naturally flows toward others. You care for them not because you need them to care for you, but because caring is simply what love does when it recognizes itself in another form. But this kind of love requires tremendous courage because it means loving without guarantees. It means opening your heart completely, without knowing if it will be received, appreciated, or reciprocated. It means giving everything without keeping score, without contracts, without insurance policies against being hurt. It means being willing to love people exactly as they are, rather than trying to change them into who you think they should be. Most of us are terrified of this kind of love because we've been taught that it's dangerous, naive, foolish. We think that if we love without protection, we'll be taken advantage of, hurt, abandoned, betrayed. We believe that smart people love carefully, conditionally, strategically. We imagine that unconditional love is for saints and martyrs, not for practical people living in the real world. But Watts saw that the opposite is true. Conditional love is what creates suffering, both for the lover and the beloved. When you love with conditions, with hooks, with expectations, you create tension, pressure, and eventual disappointment in every relationship. The other person feels your need, your fear, your attempts to control, and they naturally resist or withdraw. You feel their resistance and become more desperate, more controlling, more afraid. The very thing you're trying to preserve through conditional love gets destroyed by your attempts to preserve it. Unconditional love, on the other hand, creates space for genuine intimacy, authentic connection, and natural reciprocity. When people feel that you love them without agenda, without need, without trying to change them, they naturally want to be around you. When they sense that your love for them doesn't depend on their behavior, their achievements, or their ability to meet your expectations, they can finally relax and be themselves in your presence. This doesn't mean you become a doormat or accept poor treatment. It means you love from strength rather than weakness, from abundance rather than scarcity, from wholeness rather than neediness. It means you can set boundaries, make requests, and even end relationships when necessary. But you do so from love rather than from fear, manipulation, or revenge. The paradox is that when you stop trying to get love, you become infinitely more lovable. When you stop trying to possess others, they want to choose you freely. When you stop fearing loss, you become capable of the kind of intimacy that makes loss impossible, because true intimacy is the recognition that there was never any real separation to lose in the first place. This is what Watts meant when he talked about falling without fear. It's not that you become reckless or stop being discerning about who you trust with your heart. It's that you realize your heart can't actually be broken, because your heart is not a thing but a process, not an object but an activity, not something you have but something you are. Your heart is the very love that is the substance of existence itself. It can be disappointed, it can be saddened, it can grieve losses and mourn endings, but it cannot be fundamentally damaged because it is indestructible by its very nature. It's like water. It can take any shape, flow around any obstacle, adapt to any container, but it never loses its essential nature as water. When you know this, you can love completely without reservation because you're not trying to protect something fragile. You can give yourself entirely because you're not giving away something you might run out of. You can be vulnerable without being weak because your vulnerability is an expression of your strength, not your neediness. This is the love that God is, not the sentimental, possessive, needful love that we usually think of, but the creative, generous, fearless love that creates universes, that expresses itself as all existence, that includes everything and excludes nothing. And this love is not something separate from you that you need to earn or deserve. This love is what you are, what you've always been, what you could never not be. The reason you're afraid to love fully is not because love is dangerous, but because you've forgotten what love actually is. You've confused it with need, attachment, and the desperate attempt to get from others what you think you lack. But when you remember that you are love itself, temporarily experiencing what it's like to be human, everything changes. You can fall completely because you realize you're not falling towards something separate from yourself. You're falling into your own true nature. You can love without fear because you understand that what you really are cannot be threatened by any response or lack of response from others. You can give your heart totally because you see that your heart is not yours to begin with. It's the heart of existence itself, beating as you, loving as you, experiencing itself through your particular perspective. This is the most radical teaching about love that anyone can offer. You don't need to find love, earn love, or deserve love because you are love. You don't need to protect your heart because your heart is the indestructible essence of reality itself. You don't need to fear loving completely because complete love is your natural state when you're not afraid of what you are. God is love, but not the kind of love that needs, wants, possesses, or fears. God is the love that creates, without attachment, gives without keeping score, includes without discrimination, and expresses itself as the endless creativity and beauty of existence itself. And you are not separate from this love, you are this love, dreaming that you're a separate someone who needs to find love, temporarily forgetting that you are what you're looking for. Stop trying to get love and start being love. Stop trying to protect your heart and start recognizing that your heart is unbreakable. Stop fearing to fall and start realizing that you're falling into your own infinite nature. This is the love that moves the sun and stars, that creates galaxies and grows flowers, that beats your heart and breathes your breath. And it's what you are, what you've always been, what you're being invited to remember and embody right now. If this understanding of love as your very essence resonates with something deep in your heart, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. And if you're ready to explore more of Alan Watts's profound insights that can transform how you experience love, relationships, and your own deepest nature, subscribe and join thousands of others who are discovering the radical freedom of loving without fear.